Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Daniel Davis's Deep Dive, where we talk about the issues that are most important to Americans and giving you chances to understand how things really are beneath the surface and what things look like that you're not going to find on the regular major media television programs, because they often just don't have the time, or they're not asking the right questions. They're not asking questions that you really need to know. They're just putting things on there that basically are things that they want you to know. But I look out for your interest here. I care about what is this for the American people? What do they really need to know that the major media is not talking about, or that the areas that they're not discussing? And more than just a 2 or 3 minute soundbite here, I want to make sure you understand what's really going on. And that is so important on today's topic. There was back in, you may remember in in August, during the first Republican presidential debate, there was some discussion about the southern border. Of course, that's a major issue for the Republicans, and something that's very near and dear to their hearts is the southern border security. Well, they went to several of the contestants and they asked them, what would you do that was different? And Ron DeSantis was the most outspoken, and he was very aggressive and eager about it. And here's what he had to say.
When these drug pushers are bringing fentanyl across the border, that's going to be the last thing they do. We're going to use force, and we're going to leave them stone cold dead.
Would you?
Okay, so that's pretty aggressive. This is kind of illuminating a problem, which we're going to discuss in a future deep dive here, that the American foreign policy, especially since 9/11, took a sharp, hard turn towards militaristic solutions, to where anytime we have a problem, we want to go straight to the guns. We want to go straight to military force, or the threat of military force, to try to compel compliance with whatever the issue is that we want to happen. Whatever we think someone else should be doing or shouldn't be doing, we want to use force as the primary tool. And that seems to be the case here. In a subsequent interview on television, Ron DeSantis actually elaborated a little bit on what he intended. And here's what he had to say after that.
The reality is they are overrunning our border. They're sex trafficking, they're human trafficking, and they're bringing in massive quantities of drugs. I mean, our country is being invaded and hurt by what they're doing. And the question is, do we just throw up our hands and do we say there's nothing we can do about it? Or does a leader take action? Because I'll tell you this.
Is it a border? You said stone cold dead. And when you said that, that made me think this is more than a border patrol issue.
It is. Yeah, I'm going to have the military at the border, 100%. I mean, if they're trying to break through the wall, we will have deadly force authorized to be able to stop that. I mean, if
to shoot migrants coming across the border.
Cartel members, I mean, you have to identify them as being hostile. I mean, if there's a woman with a baby, they're not a cartel member. There's not going to be authorization to just shoot somebody like that. But when somebody's got a backpack on and they're breaking through the wall, you know that that's hostile intent, and you have every right to take action under those circumstances. And if you, guess what? You do that a few times, the times are a-changing. They will have to respond to that. They're not just going to continue to walk in to that buzzsaw. They do it now because they know that there's no pushback. They know people are dying in America, and that's fine with them. It's not fine with me.
Okay, a couple of things need to be said here right up front. These politicians accurately suggest, or actually identify, there is a problem. There is a problem at the border. We do have thousands upon thousands, sometimes tens of thousands of illegal crossers per day, undocumented workers flooding in, bringing all kinds of, nefarious intent. The vast majority are trying to escape persecution or economic hardships wherever they're coming from. They're looking for a better life. Man, I understand, the motivation for a great many of them. I mean, that's been one of the things that helped create our country is a lot of immigration from literally all over the world to come in here. But look, to use part of his phrase there, times are a-changing. This is not, the 19th century. This is not even the earlier 20th century. This is now the 21st century, and we have a very large, the largest country we've had in our history in terms of population right now. So you can't just have open borders. You can't just say anyone who wants to come can. There has to be some kind of real controls over the border. There has to be controls over the immigration. And I'm not going to get into, what the kind of criteria should be. Should we let in a bunch? Should we let in a few? Should it be this category, that category? Those are all important issues. In fact, they're critical issues that absolutely need to be addressed. We need just fundamental reform of our immigration system writ large across the board. But whatever those decisions turn out to be, and it has to be, a cumulative of all the country has to have a voice in this, not just the right, not just the left, but everybody has to have a voice in it. So those are things that need to be resolved, which so far has just been almost an intractable problem. No matter what the answer turns out to be to those, though, should be an absolutely clear case that the security of the border is assured, so that whatever the political decisions are, that we have in our ability is to enforce those decisions. So if we say only 100 should come across, then that's all 100 should come across. Or if it's 10,000, then only 10,000, but not beyond that, and only in the categories that we, through our laws, have said should come in. So that's what we should be doing. But unfortunately, we're wanting to use basically a sledgehammer to get a fly. And so we want to go, let's use military force. Let's just, and so that's a crowd pleaser to a lot, because it sounds good. It sounds like, yeah, you're right. We do need to secure the border, use the military. There's nobody better. But what does that mean? So now you heard there, Governor DeSantis saying that basically we want to use lethal force at the point of entry to kill the cartel members, anybody who's coming in there. Well, a couple of problems with that, just and according to the words that he used in that last interview. How do you identify a cartel member from a guy with a backpack with his family's belongings in it trying to illegally cross? Are you going to shoot the guy straight up? What are the rules of engagement? How do you know a cartel member from just a father, or from a coyote, somebody who's paid to bring illegals over, somebody who's nefarious, or just somebody who's trying to escape political persecution in their country? I mean, how do you know any of those things just on sight? You see that doesn't answer the question there. And to use lethal force, it sounds good on paper, but when you actually look at the ground, how does that actually work? You can see that this can go sideways so fast and be so bad if all of a sudden you have a lot of people with guns down there and they kill the dad of some innocent kids that were just trying to get a better life. And, they're violating our laws by coming in, but that's not a death sentence. It shouldn't be. Only someone who has lethal intent to harm American people that are breaking our laws, it's appropriate in those cases. And that's why when you're talking about like a literal invasion, too many people keep using this phrase, we're being invaded on our southern border. Well, that intentionally brings in military terms like Russia invaded Ukraine. Okay. The United States, we invaded Iraq in 2003. Germany invaded France in 1940. I mean, that's the imagery that you have, that an army is crossing a border and coming in here. That's not what's happening down here. We have an unsecured border that's porous and allows all kinds of people, good, bad, and indifferent, to cross without going through proper channels. So that needs to be fixed. But you can't fix that by just bringing a bunch of machine guns down and mowing down anybody who crosses the border that you can't even identify. It's just not going to work. Another solution that some have come into is that they want to use U.S. special forces to go inside Mexico, not against the government, not against their military, certainly not against their civilian population, but against the cartel members. And unfortunately, this is starting to gain a little bit of traction. And let me just tell you, point blank, that is a disastrous answer that it could never work and would be absolutely guaranteed to make the matters worse. Just imagine, if you will, forget the reasons why, if Mexico or Canada was having some kind of problem with American illegal activity going from our border into their border, and if they said, look, we can't have this, and you guys aren't taking enough action, so we're going to send in our special forces to take military action on American territory. Let me just ask you, be point blank honest with yourself. How many of you out there, raise your hands, would be okay with that, to say, well, hey, the Canadian government thought it was cool, so I mean, it is affecting their country, so okay, that's fine if they come into American territory and use military force without our permission. I don't think you actually have to raise your hand. I think you guys kind of get that we would be just going crazy if any other country dared to take military action without our authority in our country. And no other country on the planet would be any different. The Mexican government would go crazy. The Mexican people would go crazy. And then they would probably stop helping us that they are. The support and the cooperation we already have with the Mexican government would disappear, because their population would demand that we stop doing action in their country, and they would demand of their government to cease cooperation. And then, of course, you got the problem, just like we did with ISIS, with Al Qaeda, with the Taliban. You want to think you're going to go in there and eradicate the problem? All you're going to do is create more of them, and they're going to be directly attacking you. They're going to be coming after us. They're not going to be passive. They're not going to be cowed. Governor DeSantis there said, you only have to do this a few times, and then they finally start recognizing what's going on. No, they don't. They get madder, and then they start using more force against us and start trying to kill more Americans and more soldiers. That will only ramp it up. Guarantee it's not going to solve any problem. It's going to make it much worse. Now, unfortunately, that's not the end of the story. We got another one from, I believe it's just earlier today, maybe it was yesterday, Marjorie Taylor Greene, member of the United States Congress. She wants to take it a little bit further, and she had this to say.
Washington, D.C. is completely ignoring the invasion happening at our border. There has been over 10,000 people invade Eagle Pass in the last 24 hours. This is unprecedented. Our country is under attack. And who is leading the attack, Charlie, is the Mexican cartels. And so I'm announcing on your show that I would like to get Washington to realize who our real enemy is to the American people, who's responsible for 300 Americans dying every single day from fentanyl, who's responsible for a multi-billion-dollar human trafficking and drug trafficking industry that directly affects the United States of America. And that is the Mexican cartels, not the Mexican government, not the Mexican people. So I am currently drafting a declaration of war against the Mexican cartels.
A declaration of war. Okay, just a real quick history lesson here. The last time the U.S. Congress actually issued a declaration of war, December 7th or December 8th, 1941, after Pearl Harbor. So not going to happen. But the fact that she's wanting to actually have this issue to keep raising it up to a higher level, implies that maybe they want to have, something less than a declaration, is a congressional authorization or something to be able to do this. And again, you hear her using those very militaristic invasion terms, and we're being invaded at the border, and there's like we're being overrun, and all this, meaning that we need to have the military go in and do it. But look, it bears repeating. There is an issue on the border, and there is a danger of fentanyl, and it is a terrible plight that's afflicting our country, and it is killing a lot of those people. But look, the real issue is we got to get at the heart of why Americans are using these drugs. There's a lot more important things that can be done to try and alleviate this problem at the point of the use, not at the point of coming in. You're just not going to. A country as big as ours, with the thousands of miles of border, both in ports and in the north and south on the land borders, you're never, ever, ever. I don't care if you use all of our military and bring them all home from abroad and just put a ring around the country. You're never going to stop that stuff. You're never going to, because it's going to continue to do it. You even shut down situations going on in Mexico. Let's say that hypothetically, you were able to literally shut down the cartels. It's never going to happen. The Mexican government's been trying to do it, for many decades without success. So the idea that we could do it from external with some pinpoint strikes is ludicrous on the face of it. But for the moment, just hypothetically, let's say that you did. Now, what do you think the chances are that no one else in the world is going to pick up that slack, and that they're going to start producing fentanyl from somewhere else to supply the demand? Because as long as there's a demand for illegal drugs in the United States, there will be a supply. So the issue is not try to go to the one country in Mexico, this massive land area down there, and go into another country's territory and try to somehow stop it, or even to try and physically stop everything from coming from the border, which is physically impossible. What we need to try to do is focus on the demand part of it. What can we do to try to lower the use and the desire to have illegal drugs in the United States? And of course, that is a mammoth problem. And certainly there are no easy solutions. And it's something that's going to take a lot of effort by a lot of people. but at least you have some shot at success there, because then it doesn't matter where it's coming from. It only matters the user. And if we can somehow start to eat into that to address the reasons why we have so much problems with people wanting illegal drugs, then you have a shot at reducing some of that. But you have no chance if you think that military is going to be the answer. The military never eliminated the Taliban after 20 full years of full effort in Iraq, Afghanistan. They're in control today. We never eradicated them, and I've been on the record for decades saying why that's going to be the case. It never happened in Iraq. They still have problem with ISIL today. In Syria, where we have troops, ISIL still has around 10,000, 20,000, depending on how you want to count it today. We aren't going to eradicate that. Nowhere that we go that we try to eradicate a problem over there so we don't have to face it over here has been an abysmal failure. And yet you still see that there's traction for that. You see it in the Republican presidential election. You see it with Marjorie Taylor Greene. They want to use the military. They want to do this. They want to take action here. And look, we get that the action needs to be taken, but we've got to do something that's going to actually have a chance to work and not just reflexively go after something that has a horrible track record of failing utterly, because now then the problem that you recognize is not going to get fixed. It's going to get worse. And we're not even going to be going after the things that might possibly work. And we need to start changing our focus here and recognizing what doesn't work and start trying to find new solutions, something that will work. But as long as we keep going down a failed path, guarantee you the problems that we raise, we're going to continue to fail them. And there's your deep dive for today.